If you're a fan of Manika Kaur and Kirtan, you'll want to stay tuned. Manika Kaur has become the fastest selling contemporary Sikh solo artist in the world, placing Kirtan in the European world music charts for the very first time and amassing over 10 million views on YouTube. Manika Kaur has become the standard bearer of the Kirtan tradition, taking the spiritual discipline into the mainstream through her unique interpretations and sheer talent. Her music endeavors to raise funds for education projects in rural Punjab via her own charitable organization, Kirtan for Causes. All profits from sales of her albums and live concerts are donated directly to the charity, which supports the education of disadvantaged youth.
हजूर हाजरा हजूर दर पीस तू मनी तू दाना तू पीना तू दाना तू पीना मैं विचार क्या करे मैं विचार क्या करे तू दाना तू पीना दरियाओ तू देहंद तू बिसियार तू दनी देह लेह एक तू देह लेह एक तू दीगर को नहीं तू दाना तू पीना तू दाना तू पीना मैं विचार क्या करे मैं विचार क्या करे तू दाना तू पीना तू दाना तू पीना मैं विचार क्या करे न मीचे स्वामी न मीचे स्वामी बखसन तू हरी तू दाना तू पीना तू दाना तू पीना मैं विचार क्या करे मैं विचार क्या करे मैं विचार क्या करे आशीष पिता माता की आशीष पिता माता की आशीष सतगुरु तुमको होई दियाला सत्य संग तेरी प्रिय कापर पत पर मिसर राखी भोजन कीर्तन नीत भोजन कीर्तन भोजन कीर्तन पिता माता की आशीष पिता माता की आशीष पिता माता की आशीष पिता माता की आशीष निमख न बिसरो तुमको हर हर सदा बजो जगदीश निमख न बिसरो तुमको हर हर सदा बजो जगदीश पिता माता की आशीष पिता माता की आशीष अमृत पीवो सदा चिर जीवो हर सिमरत आनंद अनंता रंग तमासा पूर्ण आसा कब है न व्यापे चिंता कब है न व्यापे चिंता कब है न व्यापे चिंता पिता माता की आशीष। भंवर तुम्हारा ये मन हो हर चरना को नानक दास उन संग लपटायो जो बूंद चात्रिक मोला बूंद चात्रिक मोला बूंद चात्रिक मोला पिता माता की आशीष पिता माता की आशीष पिता माता की आशीष पिता माता की आशीष निमक न बिसरो तुमको हर हर सदा बजो जगदीश निमक न बिसरो तुमको हर हर सदा बजो जगदीश पिता माता की आशीष पिता माता की आशीष पिता माता की आशीष पिता माता की आशीष।
Renee Singh has been writing on stress management for over 3 decades for various newspapers and magazines in India, the US, and many countries around the world. Throughout her journey, she has been a spiritual life coach, designing lives and lifestyles for people, maintaining her own perception of life and how it fits into the modern everyday world with its own agenda and complete sense of values and ethics.
वाहेगुरु जी का खालसा, वाहेगुरु जी की फतेह. I welcome you all to this exclusive new episode for Sikhlens, and today we have on the show a very renowned spiritual life coach and psychologist Renee Singh ma'am. Ma'am, welcome to our show.
Thank you so much, Ojasvi. I'm very honored, I must say, to be here on this platform. And let's hope I live up to whatever I'm supposed to.
Thank you. So thank you for agreeing to speak to the audience of Sikhlens for the Joining Hands program. So it's our bit to contribute to the youth, the Sikh audience, the youngsters. How has your journey been? How did you enter into this field, and just a brief about on how things went so far.
It's been quite a journey, Ojasvi. Started from when I kind of became aware of my own self. Born in a Sikh family, I grew up with the stories of Guru Nanak and, all the 10 gurus and everything from my grandmother. But when I was sent to boarding school at the age of 4, as a very young kid to Welham Girls in Dehradun, I remember very well, I carried my little gutka of Punjabi. I didn't know any Punjabi. That school was very anglicized. You were not supposed to speak Hindi or Punjabi. But I don't know, my inner instinct kind of always told me that I wanted to be close to Guru Nanak. And I would at night, when I was a little older, like about 4 or 5, I would gather the girls in the dormitory, and at night I remember we would have the razais on our head and tell them sakhis from the Gurbani. And I don't know where they came from, honestly. Later on I realized I was just blessed by the gurus, and I was kind of in touch with my soul essence from many lives. I believe that. And that was the beginning of my journey, which continued. Then as I grew up, I started getting visions. But also I was brought up in UP and on an orchard, a farm where there were only Muslims around us. We were the only Sikh family. And somehow going to a masjid was considered as holy or as good as going to the Gurdwara. And I somehow resonated with both. Although, of course, my leaning was more Sikhi because I was closer to Guru Nanak Sahib and Guru Gobind Singh, I would kind of, feel I could resonate with what they said. And what really kind of made me resonate with them was the Sufi cult. I didn't know I was a Sufi till I realized why my thinking process was like that. So I was like always thinking in terms of one God, and why do we have different faiths, and why must we feel differently about the faiths? I mean, if there is one God, we should feel happy about just going towards Him. Not that we have to think of Him in terms of being a Muslim guru or a Sikh guru. So that was my first awareness of the fact that Sikhi is a faith. It is actually a way of life, according to me. I think although the Sikh religion is considered as a religion now, I think it's just what the gurus taught us was that it's a way of life. The Khalsa is the pure, the learner. And I have always believed that you have to keep your mind open to learning. And as Guru Gobind Singh Ji told us that after him, the Guru Manyo Granth, it is I think, all the philosophies given in the Granth Sahib have come from, they could be from Baba Farid, they could be from Kabir, from anyone. So it's like there were many faiths amalgamated into it, which made me feel very comfortable. And I think that is, I could say, a part of my journey towards where I am today. And of course, as I grew up, then I went overseas. I did many courses I studied Radha Krishna. I studied, Shivji. I went into many other modalities. But till now, I really feel that the Sikh faith has given me the most amount of comfort, because it has not taken me towards any religious fervor, at least on a personal journey. It has always made me realize that there is one God, and we are all learners, and we are all gathering knowledge about His divinity, about all the goodness we have to do, and we have to learn to just embrace that divinity within us and be in seva, be in touch and in alignment with the true spirit of humanity. I mean, that's, I would say today, if I am, I became a stress management consultant. Now, this kind of came out of it because all that's going on around us is stress. I mean, just look at it. ਜੇ ਸਾਡੇ ਸਰੀਰ ਵਿੱਚ ਕੋਈ ਵੀ ਚੀਜ਼ ਹੈ, it's an expression of a thought. ਸਭ ਤੋਂ ਉੱਤੇ, I believe, is thought. The ultimate thing is the power of thought. And it's the thought that leads us towards creating that reality. So we start attracting things according to our thinking. And it's with the thought. If we have good thoughts, if we have pure thoughts, we will always reflect that. But if we have thoughts which are breaking us in terms of religions and caste and color, I think that is going to be a disaster.
So, ma'am, a lot of people, feel in today's times, they have gone through a lot of stress, in the last 6 months or so, all across the world. And, they feel like their life has come to an end. Businesses have stopped, some people have had to sell off their properties. A lot of things have happened.
Absolutely.
They have lost jobs and, across the world. And a lot of youth have been impacted. Somebody just joined college or maybe just graduating and looking for a first job.
Absolutely.
So it's been a really stressful time. And you have largely spoken about stress management across all these years, how to deal with it. And so what is your take on this for today's times, and how do you think the youth and people of all ages can actually, should look upon life in a certain way?
Well, stress management has been very, very close to my heart because this is something which just came naturally. I mean, I grew up thinking I was going to be a fashion designer, but here I am dealing with this. I feel it's my life's mission. It's my sole purpose. And it's something that just came to me. Nothing to do with religion, nothing to do with the lifestyle. It's basically the subconscious patterns we have grown up with. And I feel that each one's capacity to handle stress is different. It doesn't matter whether you're a Hindu, a Muslim, a Sikh, a Christian. This is the humaneness in a human being. So he is, I think, programmed to stress. Somebody a little more, somebody a little less. Now, how we deal with it is, again, our own individual capacity. Some people know on a natural scale how to deal with stress, but some people need to be taught. And it's pretty easy to teach. But then again, discipline. Discipline is the key to anything and everything. And I feel that what the great masters have taught us is raise your awareness, raise your consciousness. Once your awareness is high, then nothing can stress you because you understand. You understand that everything is manageable. Everything is within your circumference. So if you know how to keep your borders and you know how to function within that, you will naturally know how to deal with stress. What can I say as a message to the audience, which is really important? Because it's very easy to say, stress mat kijiye, don't think about it, just cross it over. But it doesn't happen. I mean, everybody would love to have a magic wand and just say, oh, abracadabra, stress disappear. Doesn't disappear. It requires resilience, faith, trust in yourself, trust in the higher power, and confidence within. Once you have a sense of self-worth, Jasvi, I think that is what is the key. Self-worth and self-love. And that's something I think people are really not taught. Because if you have self-love, you will have self-worth. And I do not mean selfishness. Because most people will, just start believing that what we mean by self-love is selfish. Self-love is to respect your inner self, to respect humanity within you. And once you have that, no service is below you. It is when we start hankering after material things And when we start, that's what stress creates stress, or competing. If you're only competing with your inner self, you will never stress. I think COVID has been a blessing. You might think this is a weird thing to say, because this has firstly, it has brought the whole world together in a common thread. Everybody has realized that we're all one. No matter the differences in our caste, religion, color, race, even our looks. I mean, somebody's Chinese, somebody's dark, somebody's fair. We as Indians are the middle ones. But when it came to being affected by a tiny virus, it wasn't going to spare anyone. So we realized that humanity as a race is just one. If humanity is one, the ways of sorting problems, the ways of creating problems are again one. They can't be different. So the mind functions on a similar level. There are only 3 ways of sorting it, I believe. One is vibration, one is frequency, and the third one is love. I mean, love is the highest vibration, I think. If we live in love, there won't be anything. Love doesn't mean that, that romance of a girl and a boy or a man and a woman. Love means the inherent love for the divine, which is contained within us and which encompasses everything around us. Once we learn to live in love, stress really won't come near us, because we will not think of ourselves as separate from the other or separate from anything. We will be aligned with everything around us, and that will de-stress us automatically, bring in calm, bring in peace. And once we are at peace, then where's the stress?
Ma'am, you spoke about, creating that connect with the
Divine.
supreme power, the divine. And then you also spoke about discipline and then awareness and a lot of things. And everything that comes into my mind through this discussion that we are amidst is, the power of mind,
Yes.
And if you have a strong will, I believe, we can conquer every fear. If we are strong, we feel things can go our way, the right way, and we believe in it. And, with the power of mind comes, the power to visualize how we can create our destiny and our future along the way as we move ahead. So I would like you to discuss, or, share a bit insight to the audience on, the power of mind and how even, your faith in Sikhism has actually helped, grow over with the power of mind.
Yeah, very, very interesting question, which requires loads of answers. But I'll try to just fit it into one frame. The first article I wrote at the age of 16 for a magazine called The Illustrated Weekly, for which Mr. Kushwant Singh used to be the editor once upon a time. But during the time that I wrote it was Mr. Pritish Nandi. And I sent it across to him, and it was called The Invincible Power of Thought, and how with our thought we could create our reality. I still remember he sent it back to me and said, "Oh, we don't publish such trash." I was heartbroken because I thought I'd really discovered this, grand theory of how life moves. And after many years, I remember Time magazine coming out with the same article, similar lines with a similar viewpoint. And then I remember meeting Mr. Pritish Nandi at the Jaipur Literature Festival, and he didn't recognize me. In fact, by then, by God's grace, I was as the poet of the festival. I have been writing Sufi poetry. And he wanted to exchange numbers, and he wanted my address and stuff. So I told him, I said, "Sir, you remember, many years ago, I sent you this one thing and you were completely disappointed." He was really taken aback, because in today's world, people have accepted that it's the power of thought that is creating the reality around us. I also go sometimes to the Quantum University in Hawaii, in Honolulu, where some of the greatest, I won't say some of but the greatest thinkers, philosophers, scientists are coming to speak on the platform. And people like Dr. Joe Dispenza or Bruce Lipton or Eric Pearl. And I really, really value these guys and admire their work, and so does the whole world. It's like that's what they talk about. How the mind is the creator of a reality. And of course, everybody's read or at least heard of Rhonda Byrne's The Secret. That shook the world completely, because that's what teaches us the law of attraction. Now, attraction is, of course, what our mind creates or projects. That's what we attract. So if we are exuding stress, we are attracting more stress. If we are exuding confidence or positivity, that's what we are attracting. And that's what we are creating as our reality. So I think that was another one of your questions. How can we create something positive? My answer to that is, firstly, think of the mind as you think of the gym for the body. So the mind is our mental gym. I always say that. I created that word, mental gymming, because I feel that if we treat our mind as a gym, if we learn to discipline our mind, we will learn to, like we strengthen the body in the gym, we will strengthen our mind. And once the mind is strengthened, it is capable of anything. So it's like we learn to meditate.
So, ma'am, why is it so imperative to have a mental clarity? I mean, clarity about things. Why is it so necessary, to see one's own soul purpose?
Yeah, but because I feel that's what the Creator has sent us here for. There are so many planets. There are so many dimensions. We at the moment are living in the third dimension. And we are all ascending towards the fifth dimension. People like the ascended masters, I would say, who are people like Guru Nanak, people like Lord Buddha, Krishna, Shiva, Jesus Christ. They were all people who came from other planets to infuse us with a knowledge we were not aware of. That's why they had this huge following. And now that slowly we are learning to step into another era, which I strongly believe. I mean, I've been talking about for the last many, many years. I mean, not me, there are many people like me who have been talking about the shift. And we at the moment are in the middle of this shift. So this shift is going to change the mindsets of the people, because the vibration on the planet is changing. This is not the first time it's happening. It's happened many times. And each time it's happened, they have left us, the great masters have left us with great texts like the Upanishads, the Vedas. And I feel that the Guru Granth Sahib is got the essence, the true essence of the Vedas, the Gita, the Quran. All the great masters took out the essence of truth, of reality, from these great texts and put it in a very simple way for us in the Guru Granth Sahib. That's why they said, Guru Manyo Granth. Think that this is the Guru. Whatever you're going to read over there is going to be the Guru. So, I mean, I feel that it's a great way of managing stress. It's like if you start living with those principles, you are going to manage to get over your stress.
So, ma'am, when we say that we need, immediate relief from stress, or maybe, relief in just the coming times. So, is there a tip that you can offer or, share with people what we should be doing?
Yeah, definitely. You've asked a question after my heart, Ojasvi, because I feel so strongly about, relieving that pain, because, I've been writing columns on stress for more than 2 decades. I think almost 20. I hate to take a figure because then you get to know how young I am, but almost 30 years now. And I've had so many thousands of people coming and telling me that, you've been like such a source of joy and you've changed our lives. And a fan following, which I feel is, thanks to God, is like a blessing, because if I have managed to help so many people relieve their pain, I think it's a blessing that God is using me to do that. What I feel personally is that prayer is one way, but sometimes we can't concentrate on prayer when we are really worrying about something. So the first thing, of course, like I said earlier, was discipline your mind. Give yourself 10 minutes in the morning when you empty your mind and just think about the day which is coming in front of you. Then at night before sleeping, spend another 10 minutes and think about what you did. Journaling is a great way where you just write down everything so it gets out of your system. But the best way in today's world, I feel, is affirmation. It's just like Purane zamane mein, people would recite mantras, or we have, let's say, as a Sikh, I would say, in the Gurbani, we have a lot of mantras. But there's, the modern generation, the youngsters, sometimes do not know Sanskrit, do not even know Hindi, do not know Punjabi. And for them, it's very difficult to just repeat something without understanding the meaning of it. So I think if we are in an English-speaking world, we can affirm in English. Like you say, ke, I want to be happy, or I want, if I create a small affirmation, God bless me with good thoughts, health, wealth, and happiness. And just repeat it 21 times. That's the master's number. And for 30 days. After that, it becomes a part of your subconscious. Now, whatever we are reacting to in life is coming from our subconscious. 95% of our action is subconscious. 5% is coming from here, from the conscious mind. So once we change the programming of our subconscious mind, we naturally change our stress levels. Affirmation. Affirmation is the prayer of today.
So just out of curiosity, I would like to ask, the amount of gadgets or the amount of, say, mobile phones or our tablets or our laptops or the screen time that we are consuming, do you think that is adding to our stress levels?
Definitely, everything is emitting a vibration. Like I was saying, everything is a vibration, frequency, and energy. And today's world, we have become very, very conscious of energy. You and I are two energies. Now, if you're vibrating at a higher level, your frequency is high, your energy is higher. And if you're vibrating at a lower one, then it's lower. Now, I must just give you one tip on the COVID situation which we have today.
Right.
Now, the virus is vibrating at a certain frequency. If we are, with our positive thoughts, manage to raise our own frequency, then we are vibrating at a higher frequency than the virus. It can't get us. That is what they call about the immune system becoming stronger. But if we, with our negative thinking and this huge amounts of stress, are going under, then we are at a lower frequency than the virus. It's obviously going to come and catch you. It's only logic.
Ma'am, we have also heard you being a part of a lot of literature festivals and a lot of poetry festivals, a lot of Sufi poetry festivals, rather,
Right.
I would say. And you had been writing since the age of 6.
Yeah.
And how has your writing and your thought process and the constant belief in Sikhism that you carried throughout your life has evolved over the years in your writing and in your poetries that you narrate to the audience in general?
Yeah, that's a question I'm so passionate about because I think poetry is a part of me. I grew up with it. I won't even say 6. I think I must have been about 3 or 4 years old. And in my boarding school in Wellams, I remember we had these lychee trees. I was a lonesome child. I would just go and sit under the lychee tree and stare at the stars at night. Or I would be thinking, what am I doing here? And then, why am I here on this planet? And that's when I would journal. I would go back to my bed and I would start writing. And I remember the words that would flow through me were words I never understood. I don't know what I was writing, but I was writing. And as I grew up, I realized I would read that and I would wonder, I still remember I wrote something about dimensions. And I didn't even know what a dimension was. And that word stayed in my mind. I said, what am I saying? But then one great thing about me was, great blessing on me was that I could surrender to the spirit, surrender to the divinity. And what I loved about being born as a Sikh, I feel very blessed because it's the most modern way of life. The Guru taught us that just grihast mein hi sab kuch hai. In living a normal life on the planet is the true path to, let's say, spiritual freedom or reaching the divine. My poetry, as I grew older, I just kept writing. I could write for days. And I didn't get it published till I was more over 20. I think I was almost 30, and I was sitting with a friend of mine who's a very big poet, I don't know, Nirupama Dutt, and she kind of looked through my poems and she said, "Oh my God, Renee, this is like keeping jewelry in the locker. What's wrong with you?" And I somehow was never convinced I was good enough. I thought, who's going to listen to tales of God and divinity and the spirit? Everybody kind of was in this materialistic world, was interested in things which kind of they could relate to on a physical level. But then I got my first book published, and it was a huge success thanks to him, because I believe that when the divine spirit decides it wants to bring a message out into the world, it is only divine timing. Only then your work will see the light of the day. And year before last, I was the leading poet of the Jaipur Literature Festival, and I came out with a lot of poetry which was written, which, I mixed from the early days and now. And they actually had, the first time ever, they had something called performance poetry. They got us a band, they got me a band for 3 days to practice the piano and music with the poetry, and they asked me to recite as the first poet in the festival. And I think I was so blessed that I had a standing ovation, which I was really amazed at. So I feel that it is the hour of poetry. Poetry is the voice of God. Poetry is the voice of Rumi, who touches the world's hearts today.
So all that I can understand from this is that, poetry is one way that you perhaps, vent your own stress. Maybe.
Yes, absolutely.
Maybe that the pen and do you type, or do you what? How do you write?
No, I write. I still write
Wow.
with the pen and the paper, because I feel it's very important for the pen to touch
Right.
the paper. It's because it's kind of it's like being in love. For me, everything is love. Because love, I believe, is the frequency on this planet. That's the highest frequency. Whether it's love for a human, or it's... if you look at the Radha Krishna love, it's like they take the name of Radha before Krishna. And it is... she was... I did a course in Radha Krishna miniature paintings from Cambridge. And I was so shocked when my professor said that Radha was 19 years older than Krishna. I almost freaked. My conservative self could not believe it. And she was another man's wife. And yet they are worshipped as the eternal lovers. Because Lord Krishna said that love is beyond the human flesh. In terms of the spirit, we could be any age. In terms of the body, we are entrapped in this vessel, which shows us an age which you become a child, you grow old, and then you die. But poetry lives on. Look at Rumi, he wrote thousands of years ago, and today he's worshipped by every poet. America's crazy about him. There's a Rumi society. I was in Chicago at a festival where, thanks to the divine power, they were trying to compare my work to him. I would humbly beg to sort of say that I'm nowhere close to that. But what I'm trying to emphasize is that love is such a powerful force that you could have written about it thousands of years ago, you could write about it now. It will connect to the hearts of the people. And stress is nowhere near you if you're in true love.
Right.
So love is the answer, I would say. Love. That's important.
Right. I believe, how Renee ma'am puts it is that, it's self-love, and it's, believing in self-worth, which is very much needed in today's times to, deal with all sorts of insecurities and all sorts of stress, if I may put it the right way, as ma'am said, and, building that connection with the Almighty Vaheguru, and in any form of way that you can do, maybe pick up any form of art, maybe poetry, as Renee ma'am does it so well, or maybe some form of music or dance, or maybe some sport, anything that you may feel passionate and driven while doing so.
Absolutely.
Right. So thank you, Renee ma'am, for joining us today for this special program for Sikhlens. Here's me, Ojasvi Sharma, signing off from Sikhlens with Renee Singh ma'am, and Vaheguru Ji da Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji di Fateh.
And now, behind the scenes, Sikh Heritage at the Smithsonian. Dr. Paul Taylor from the famed Smithsonian Museum guides a fascinating tour of a relatively unknown exhibit that has managed to grab the attention of passers-by who are visiting the museum for other reasons. Sikh artifacts symbolize Sikh identity, and nowhere is a treasure trove of such artifacts on better display than at the Smithsonian. Dr. Taylor provides social, political, and aesthetic context to a wide variety of objects, books, and historical stories, building an irresistible narrative of the Sikh experience from its inception until today.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to an adventure. Your guide is going to be Paul Taylor, a professor and also a director and a curator. The title of the adventure is Behind the Scenes, Sikhs, Legacy of the Punjab. And Paul Taylor is a director, or the director, of the Asian Cultural History Program, as well as a curator of Asian, European, and Middle Eastern ethnology, all of this at the world-famous Smithsonian Institution. I wanted to begin with a couple of questions that have arisen in my mind. The primary one is, having lived most of my life with an obscure ethnic history of Sikhs, I would like to know how you and others have managed to bring this subject into the mainstream in such a spectacular fashion.
Well, thanks for the complimentary question, I have to say, but it certainly wasn't me. It was lots and lots of people, and primarily people in the Sikh community. I would say that the model of what became the Sikh Heritage Project is really a series of heritage projects which preceded it within the program that I direct at the Smithsonian, which is called the Asian Cultural History Program. And so there was a kind of precedent for how to set up such a program or a project. I mean, as an anthropologist, I don't see this as an obscure topic, and I also, frankly, if your scope within the Smithsonian is as curator for Asia, Europe, and the Middle East, you're not looking for just satellite views of the whole area as what you're trying to do. You're actually looking for the really interesting and specific stories that are of great interest, but also of conceptual importance for the history of humankind. And certainly many aspects of the cultural heritage of Sikhism fit that. And it has an outsized importance in the history of South Asian literature and art and so on, even though it was not recognized for a long time. But the other important point here is that the Smithsonian itself had not gotten around to that before. There were plenty of studies and books and exhibitions about Hinduism and Islam and so on. So this was an area waiting to be developed that hadn't been developed before, but certainly very fitting. Not all Sikhs agree on all things at all times. So anyway, I don't know that you would find 100%. For some people, history is extremely important, others less so. But about a person's identity, that's very important to everyone. And an exhibition or a project like this, with its other sort of points of contact with the public, a launch of a new book, a conference, an outreach event like a public lecture, or the showing of a film or a series of films, some of the kinds of things that the Sikhlens does. These things are anthropologically rituals. I mean, what anthropologists call rituals, that are things that are done again and again, and at every occasion it brings people together in a way that reinforces for all of them the value of their shared community or their shared goals and aspirations and so on. Opening an exhibition about Sikhs at the National Museum of the United States, which when it opened, by the way, just happened to be right next to an exhibition about baseball. I mean, how American can you get? That was a very, very significant occasion for many people. And the exhibition that we did in Washington was at the Natural History Museum. As I mentioned, it was going to be part of a Hall of Asian Peoples, which never materialized. But this had already started, so it kind of got grandfathered in. It was very difficult, really, to get exhibition space there. You know, and you have between 8 and 10 million people a year visiting this exhibition. So millions of people had the opportunity to view this, and the vast majority of people who come to see the exhibition were not coming to the museum to see this exhibition. They were going to see other things, and they found this very attractive visually, and because there was also some music that you could hear from the entrances. And so a lot of people came in. That was one of the purposes, to make this not an obscure subject, but a very central, interesting subject for many people who had not thought about it before, or maybe had seen Sikhs, maybe seen somebody wearing a turban, never really understood what it was about, and they actually took the opportunity to learn more. That was one of the purposes. Another goal, though, was actually for the Sikh community, to make sure that they also had every reason to understand that they are an important part of our wider American history and community, and that their the importance of their cultural history is a great one. So when you have something like an exhibition that takes place in a national museum, that's also a kind of ritual, the opening events and so on, in the anthropological sense. It's an opportunity for people to come together and recognize that, yes, what we're doing or what we are is really very important. The original plan for which we began planning this exhibition, that is to fit within a hall of identities and how identity formation takes place with various peoples, ethnic groups, and religions throughout Asia, never happened. But this one component of it, about the Sikhs, was sort of grandfathered in and continued to be produced as an exhibition. And we had, therefore, the Sikhs Legacy of the Punjab as a wonderful exhibition, which kind of stood out on its own. Now, Sandeep Singh Brar kindly put together this Sikh Heritage Gallery online, which is actually still up online, showing what the exhibition was like in 2004. You never see the same Sikh exhibition twice because we're constantly changing it for the protection of the artifacts, but also because that's the nature of the exhibition. You can see in his online show some members of the Sikh Heritage Foundation. They were the major initial funders of the exhibition. And in addition, Dr. Renee Singh was the major lender for the exhibition. Without these people and many others who came afterwards to help, this would not have been possible. So I mentioned earlier, this was not done by me, it was done by lots and lots of people. And it was done partly with a lot of community support for its funding, but also in other ways. So you have to make always an exhibition that looks good no matter which direction you go and how you get there. I have an image of the other entrance, and I wanted to use that to illustrate a couple of things. One is you'll see a lot of sort of like the equivalent of a cardboard cutout. It's not cardboard, but anyway, it's the cutout images of a photograph of people. And there at the Silver Spring Gurdwara, that's not far from here. These are just people, our neighbors, people of all kinds, ages, who are Sikhs. And that's basically a message that each of these venues has informed people about. They said, look, we are your friends, we're your neighbors, we are Sikhs, and they're Americans, they're in tennis shoes, whatever. And so people walk in, one of the things they see is just everyday people before they get to this ancient artifacts and wonderful old armor from India and so on, because we're establishing the fact that these are communities all around us who are actively participating in these traditions. It also emphasized that there was community involvement throughout the construction of this exhibition. One of the things I want to emphasize is that in some of the later venues, people used duplicates or photographic images of some of the original artworks. And we actually had to do that right from the beginning. This initial Age of the Sikh Gurus, for example, has a blown up graphic image of the 10 Gurus gouache on paper artwork, which was also present and separately framed at the opening. But the framed image in the vitrine, the graphic panel that you're seeing here in the vitrine, was there permanently. It's designed to be used permanently, and the original watercolor on paper simply does not withstand long periods in the light. So for the protection of really authentic artworks, you cannot leave them out very long. And so you see here a combination of the original artworks, like this Tanjore painting in a gold frame, and actually the Janam Saki that's open in the middle is an original. But on the lower right, you see the photographic image of another Janam Saki, and that's because it's so fragile. Although there is a real wonderful potential for exhibiting it sometime in the future, you'd have to design an exhibit that's a very different kind to do that. Here's some close-ups of some of the material in there. Here's the Tanjore painting. And this is the original Janam Saki that we used. Now, what I want to mention about the exhibition also as a general observation, which is why I'm kind of going slowly at the beginning, bringing up all these other topics, is that we tried to combine conservation work with the exhibition, but this was just too much conservation work. Let's take a look at this Janam Saki. We used, as I said, the photograph of it in the lower right corner of that cabinet rather than the original. It would have been nice to use the original. Someday we should use the original for an exhibition, but it's going to have a very special exhibition designed for itself. And this is a wonderful project, one of many that we find in the course of doing an exhibit. It would be great to publish this entire book. But you see, the illustration is quite fragile. That kind of painting is very common in Sikh paintings. The color is called verdigris, And verdigris has a chemical composition which inherently is causing the paper substrate to deteriorate. It can be neutralized, but it's a very kind of complex and expensive process to do. So you see a piece of the original paper has fallen out in the middle from this Janamsakhi tale of the life of the Guru, of Guru Nanak Dev Ji. And that's because the substrate has become so weak there. So you'd have to really stabilize this entire book before you could put it on exhibition. This is the kind of thing we love to do as a special project, maybe some special exhibition in the future, to do a real conservation project and then put this, and then be able to include this. Now we did some. This was not one that we were able to undertake. Now here we have a very interesting issue. The Sikhs are very familiar with this. American and non-Sikhs usually are not. In a museum environment, how do we talk about and put on display a Guru Granth Sahib Ji when we have a situation in which people would be normally expected to cover their heads, take off their shoes, and other forms of respect in the presence of the Guru Granth Sahib? So a label has to explain there that what you're seeing is just a prop used in place of the Guru Granth Sahib, but everything else is original material. And actually, statistically, this is one of the things people remembered most, which is kind of unusual, because in exhibitions, when you go through and survey people afterwards what they remember, it's usually some spectacular artwork. Whereas in this exhibition, one of the things people remembered most was the complete absence of an artwork or an object on display. Well, I'm sort of rushing through this, but the founding of the Khalsa and other things are depicted here. And the 5 Ks at this point are also described very briefly. And then we move to on to the history of the Sikhs in the Punjab after the period of the early gurus. We include this section talking about, for example, Maharaja Ranjit Singh. And we have some wonderful old weapons, and we have also a set of ivory images. Here's the ivory image that were like little portraits of Maharaja Ranjit Singh with his entire court. Among the things to note were the presence of many non-Sikhs in prominent positions within the court of advisors, and the openness to and tolerance of a wide variety of religious traditions. This interesting vitrine is actually what ended up happening within our exhibition from an early plan to have just one little vitrine about the Sikhs, which we were thinking of using back in 2000, the Sikh martial tradition as an image of Sikhism, and even did a very early design for that, which I published in a paper on the history of this project. And I will also mention that from the beginning, we were involved in a lot of community discussions long before the exhibition took shape about how Sikhs wanted to be represented and what kinds of things should be there. And everybody felt that the Darbar Sahib in Amritsar was a very important topic, the so-called Golden Temple, is a central image of Sikhism. So we ended up, thanks to the Malik family of Mr. Gurdip Singh Malik in Los Angeles. So we ended up being able to commission through the family of Mr. Gurdip Singh Malik in Los Angeles as their donation. They commissioned the creation of a model of the Golden Temple, which was a really very popular part of this exhibition and has continued to be so. It got a lot of publicity in India, as you can see, when it was first being put together and about to be shipped to the United States. But it has ended up always in a very central location, and everybody has always wanted it. It's actually been used at several places while the exhibition itself is awaiting its transport to the next venue. The Golden Temple is often put up in Gurdwaras or other locations. One thing people are always asking about, they've never really understood, is the turbans. So we put this section, a whole section about the Sikh turban in this part of the exhibition. And as it traveled, this got a lot of attention and got some variation with local variations. And in fact, I'm not that familiar with a lot of sports, and there was one that was in Texas that I thought had a very unusual symbol on it. And I asked some of the Sikh elders there if they could explain that symbol to me. And it turns out that was a turban with the symbol of the San Antonio Spurs basketball team. So there's a lot of variation. But the fact is that's one of the questions that non-Sikhs really have about Sikhism, what's with the turban. So I would say that as a general rule for people putting exhibitions together, whenever you do an exhibition, you have to do a lot of sort of testing, an audience testing, because if people walk through an exhibition a lot of people will come out and they'll have one question and somebody else will have a different question. But if a lot of people go through an exhibition and they all have the same question, then in my opinion, that means this is an unsuccessful exhibition. Because if everybody goes through the exhibition, they come out with the same question that they want to ask, then that means you should have answered that question in the exhibition. And one of the big questions people have is, why do Sikhs wear a turban? So this was the place to cover that topic, right, in the section on how do Sikhs practice their faith. Here's the Singh twins paintings that we had included, for example, that wonderful painting, that very memorable painting, 1984, and others that are really central to everybody's memory of seeing this exhibition, I think, if you did see these paintings. I have some close-ups of all of these paintings. Some of the Lahore schools are not Sikh, Hindu or Islamic as well, but they all have this same problem, if I want to call it a problem, of their preservation. In the painting itself, you can see that there's some flaking taking place, and that's because the nature of the painting and the nature of the paints used on this material over time will flake. So you'd need a very careful conservation, and yet that's not really taking place. And why is that not taking place? Because I think this school of painting was kind of undervalued in some ways. It was too Indian, I suppose, for really acceptance by British and European artists and art historians. At the same time, at the time of independence of India and Pakistan, it was also too Western. So it kind of fell between the cracks. And here you have this, in my opinion, really world-class tradition of painting that fell between the cracks and is not really being recognized for the importance and the quality of the art. And that's changing now. But what we know is that, meanwhile, an entire school of art is falling apart wherever it happens to be. And it's the kind of challenge where you'd like to say, can we do an exhibition and a really serious catalog, which would build into it the funding needed to do a careful restoration of the paintings, study of their history and the artists and so on, travel the exhibition around and so on, because we've seen again and again that exhibitions can be good for collections. But it would take something like that, and there's only so many of those any person can do in a career and any institution can undertake. But hopefully somebody will take that on, and that would be a great thing. I would love to help in any way I could. I mentioned the Janam Sakhi, also another preservation issue. I mentioned the verdigris as a chemical composition, which looked great. It looked magnificent, bright green, but it causes the substrate of the paper itself to deteriorate. And that's a big issue. So I would love to see entire books like this, illustrated books, really published and in translation, understood, but including within that, hopefully, the preservation of the originals, which definitely needs to be done, and that's something for the future.
Well, we hope that people will be watching you saying this and get inspired to invest.
Yeah, no, that's what I hope very much will happen, and that's why I keep talking about it. And I have to say, we've been very grateful to the people who have contributed to the Sikh Heritage Project. We've done a lot about this already, but there's much, much more to be done. Research on art is continuing also on applications of new technology. This isn't really a new technology used, but the Tanjore painting that I mentioned, central to our section on the history of the Sikh gurus, the tradition within the family that had it was an older painting than it looked to be. So I naturally thought, well, probably this must be then something that was painted over a painting underneath it, because otherwise, why would it be tradition of being an older painting? So when I did the X-ray, though, it doesn't. You can see for yourself if you look at this X-ray that there's no older painting underneath it. At the same time, you see a very interesting phenomenon here that this is made of multiple planks underneath that single layer. And the planks are held together with these double pointed nails pointed on both sides that are holding the two planks together. I believe that's a technique that comes from shipbuilding. I'm not sure about that. But anyway, lots to discover that we didn't know before. This is the book by Sikhlens Singh with Rupinder Singh. So this is his book. This was published in India, but we try to get involved and help where we can.
So now you know of the Court of Lahore that Auguste Schöft did, that huge painting that I believe may be in jeopardy. Is that something that the Smithsonian could get involved in terms of restoration or even moving it to a better location in Pakistan or elsewhere?
Well, like many other artifacts and objects that are in danger and magnificent, it's not our property. So it's not for us to say. In principle, it would be part of our mission to try to help its preservation.
You mentioned that people almost stumbled upon this exhibition rather than coming to it from a deliberate perspective. Can you generalize about the viewers, Sikhs, non-Sikhs, if there was a consensus about the exhibition and how you feel about the success of what you've done?
First, I would say I feel very happy about the success, but not because I did it. I would feel the success of a huge community of people working together, and that's the success that I feel. The Sikhs were very, very enthusiastic about this exhibition, and I think many Sikhs who would not have come to our museum came to see the exhibition. There's no question about that. A lot of people who were Sikhs, or friends, families, other people who knew about Sikhism and who had heard about this exhibition, came to the museum specifically to see this exhibition. That's true. However, let's face it, this is a museum that in those days, we were having between 7 and 10 million visitors a year. The vast majority of those visitors were not coming to see this exhibition. They were coming to see all the dinosaurs and all the Hope Diamond and all the things that the Smithsonian is famous for. And while there, came across this exhibition and really learned a lot about this subject. So in that sense, I think all the people who helped put this exhibition together felt it was great that this happened here at a place like our museum where a lot of people would see this who might not have seen it otherwise. If the exhibition had taken place in a Gurdwara as a visitor center to a Gurdwara or something, that would have made it maybe effective for the people who saw it, but the audience would have been quite different.
Out of curiosity, is there a encapsulation of the tenets of Sikhism anywhere in the exhibition so that when people leave, they'll know, well, what do they believe in, or is that not part of your mission?
I think people get a sense of values of Sikhism. And we decided not to try to list dogmas, but we listed the teachings of the gurus and the messages of the gurus and the messages at many points citing the Guru Granth Sahib Ji. But no, we did not try to have a special case on dogma. We were talking about cultural tradition. It's a museum of the Smithsonian and a cultural history program of research on cultural history. I think if this were maybe at a theological institute, it would have been a different kind of exhibition.
The Sikh community or the Sikh diaspora is a very, very successful one. And there are gurdwaras everywhere. And if you want to build a gurdwara, anecdotally, I can tell you that the money will come. Because the Sikh diaspora has been so blessed, do you foresee this kind of an exhibition helping to add to their investment in Sikhi through means other than building gurdwaras and educating the youth about Sikh culture and Sikh history? What can be done with an exhibition like this and future ways to inspire an investment in Sikh culture and identity?
Yes, thanks for that question. I think the help that people did to put this exhibition together, to have these initiatives like conferences, like the creation of books, the conservation work, all these things are really forms of sewa for the Sikh community, of service to others, you know. And I do hope that as the Sikh community becomes more successful and can see how valuable things like our outreach efforts through exhibit, through books, through conferences, through film series, and this sort of thing, how effective those things can be, that they will step forward and really participate even more in this area. I know that, we've never, within our Sikh Heritage project anyway at the Smithsonian, we've never been trying to kind of build an empire of any kind. We see their valuable need for some specific thing that should be done. And then we sometimes call on people and say, can you help us find the funding or help give up some of your time and make this happen? And with something as big as the Sikh's Legacy of the Punjab exhibition, that took a lot of people and a lot of time, and a lot of people had to, make some wonderful contributions. But there's a lot more to be done. But even if it's on a small scale in a little place, people all over the country should recognize that their heritage is something that they could do a lot more with in terms of just helping everybody understand the traditions and cultural heritage of Sikhism through local exhibitions and through sharing music and literature and other activities, conferences. We'll be happy to help. And in fact, that's one of the purposes of the Sikh Heritage Project. If you have an idea and you're not sure how to do it, feel free to contact me and we'll be happy to help.
Well, you can't ask for more than that, people. I hope you've really enjoyed your adventure with Dr. Taylor. And I'll now pass the baton on to Vicky for a sign-off.
Thank you, Paul, for your wonderful wisdom and insights into the working of putting up these exhibitions, and greatly appreciated your time, and thank you.
So I really thank everybody who's been a big supporter of the Smithsonian Sikh Heritage Project. And we're happy that we've been able to do several just wonderful, wonderful projects. I personally am grateful for the opportunity to have read quite a bit and still have a lot more to do in reading about the subject of Sikh heritage. And I look forward to continuing strong Sikh Heritage Project, hopefully long into the future. So thanks very much.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you very much.